It is a still, cloudless night on Scotland's west coast. The date is 24th November 1990. Across a stretch of water known as the Butt Sound, 3 fishing trawlers work in slow, deliberate lines. Their navigation lights mark faint trails of color across the calm surface. Diesel engines hum in steady rhythm as the crews tend to the gear that drags hundreds of feet below them through a deep glacial trench carved by the last ice age. The trawlers are the Hercules from Ayr, the Heroine from Troon, and a small wooden vessel named Antares out of Carradale. They have fished these waters for years. Each captain knows the seabed contours by heart and trusts the reliability of his radio and radar as much as the feel of the tide beneath the keel. Tonight, conditions are ideal. Light southerly winds, a mild temperature of 11 degrees, and 8 miles of visibility. Nothing in the weather suggests danger. At the same hour, far below and out of sight, another vessel is also operating in the same area. It is the Royal Navy submarine HMS Trenchant, one of Britain's Trafalgar-class nuclear-powered attack submarines, 82 meters in length, displacing 4,900 tons. She carries a crew of 120. The Trenchant is not on combat patrol, but engaged in a scheduled training mission, part of the Royal Navy's demanding Perisher course, the final examination for officers seeking submarine command. The Perisher is considered one of the most difficult qualifications in modern naval service. Candidates are assessed not only for technical ability, but for their capacity to make rapid decisions under pressure, where mistakes can prove fatal. Only a small number of officers pass each year. Those who fail are permanently barred from commanding a submarine again. The Trenchant has been at sea for 4 days, conducting exercises between Scotland and the Faroe Islands. Her captain, a veteran submariner of 18 years, oversees the course. He completed his own Perisher in 1980 and now serves as both instructor and safeguard. Inside the submarine, fluorescent lights cast a pale hue over consoles and chart tables. The confined air smells faintly of oil and metal. 4 trainees remain of the original 6 who began the exercise. 2 have already been withdrawn, 1 for fatigue, another for procedural error. By late evening, the Trenchant has completed a dummy mine-laying drill in the Hunter Channel, assisted by the surface ship HMS Charybdis, acting as an opposing force. With that phase concluded, both vessels proceed west into open water to practice simulated torpedo attacks. At 01:30 hours, the Trenchant comes to periscope depth. Through the narrow lens, the duty officer observes the Charybdis to the north, and no other ships in sight. Satisfied, he reports the area clear. At 02 hours, the exercise is declared complete. The submarine submerges again to 60 meters and sets a new course of 315 degrees true, heading northwest toward the Isle of Arran at 6 knots. The commanding officer and course leader retire to the wardroom to review performance, leaving the watch to a trainee, the Antares, at the same time in Carradale. The 4-man crew of Antares had left harbor 11 hours earlier. The vessel, built in 1965, measures 17.4 meters overall, with a beam of 5.2 meters. Constructed of timber and powered by a single Gardner 8L3 diesel engine, she is typical of the Scottish inshore fleet of the period. Her skipper, aged 36, purchased her 3 years prior and operates her with a small, steady crew. Fishing is both livelihood and tradition here, skills passed through generation. Before departure, they loaded stores for a 5-day trip, food, fuel, and ice for the catch. Their destination, the deep trench of the Butt Sound, lies northeast of the Isle of Arran, a ground known for good hauls of haddock and whiting. By 17:30 hours, the Antares returns from a short offload at Largs and begins towing again in the southern Butt Sound. Her course is northwesterly. Ahead, the crew can see the lights of the Heroine also towing. The 2 captains exchange brief words over VHF radio. The Antares skipper informs the Heroine he will rest below deck for a short period, while another hand keeps watch on the bridge. It is a common practice. They end the call with an informal over and out. At this moment, nothing appears out of the ordinary. The crew continue hauling at a steady 3 knots, nets running true. They have no reason to believe that beneath them, a submarine is now on an intersecting path. The approach inside the Trenchant, the sonar operators maintain a routine sweep of contact. The North Atlantic in peacetime is crowded with civilian noise, merchant ships, fishing vessels, and the continuous low-frequency hum of distant traffic. To trained ears, each sound has a signature. At 02:15, new traces appear on the screen. 4 contacts are marked: M1, M3, M5, and M45. One is identified as the Charybdis, now departing the area. Another, contact 5, is logged as a fishing vessel. Its bearing changes rapidly. Its propeller rhythm increases. The sonar estimates it within 2,000 yards and closing. The watch officer orders a gentle turn to port to widen separation. But the change of heading coincides almost exactly with the Antares turning starboard to resume her previous tow. In 3 dimensions of moving water, the result is convergence. Within seconds, the sonar trace of contact 5 grows sharply louder. The operator reports it is approaching quickly. Before further action can be taken, a heavy jolt runs the length of the submarine. The Trenchant's bow shudders. Instruments rattle in their mounts. The sonar headphones fill with the grating sound of wires scraping along steel. Engines are stopped. In the control room, officers exchange quick, quiet words. Trawl snag. The commanding officer is summoned back to the bridge. On the surface above them, the Antares reacts to the same moment in reverse. The trawl warps wrench violently tight, pulling the vessel backward through the water. The wheel jerks from its setting. Unsecured equipment skids across the deck. One crewman is thrown against the bulkhead. The boat heels sharply to starboard, her gunwale dipping below the surface. Within seconds, water floods through the open wheelhouse door. The skipper attempts to power ahead to release tension, but the propeller bites only air. As the cables strain, the hull begins to roll. No distress call is transmitted. The Antares sinks stern first into the butt sound, disappearing within half a minute. All 4 men remain aboard. Immediate aftermath below. The Trenchant's crew listen as the scraping subsides. Through their headsets comes the faint, distinct sound of a small propeller turning freely in the current. Then silence. Unsure of the situation, the captain orders the submarine to periscope depth. At 02:25, he scans the surface. 2 trawlers are visible to the northwest, their lights steady, continuing to fish. No debris, no flares, no alarm. He contacts the Charybdis, which confirms no distress calls have been heard. A decision is made to surface fully for inspection. Once on the surface, crew members discover fragments of steel wire and chain tangled around the submarine's fin. It is evident that some kind of trawl has been fouled. Yet, there are no obvious signs of damage to the submarine itself. Believing that any incident would have been minor, and with no visual evidence of a vessel in distress, the commanding officer reports the occurrence to headquarters at Faslane as a possible snag with fishing gear. No assistance required. The Trenchant then resumes her exercise schedule. Discovery at first light. The fishing grounds appear routine to other vessels. The Heroine and Hercules continue their tows, noting only that the Antares is no longer on radar. They assume she has moved to alternate grounds. By Aero 9 WO, when the Antares still fails to respond, concern begins to spread. The skipper of the Heroine radios the Coast Guard. A search and rescue operation is launched from the nearby port of Campbelltown. Helicopters begin sweeping the Butt Sound. Before noon, they locate surface debris, oil traces, fish boxes, and fragments of netting consistent with a trawler loss. Divers from the Royal Navy's Submarine Rescue Service are dispatched. Using side-scan sonar, they locate an anomaly on the seabed at a depth of approximately 150 meters. It lies upright on a gentle slope facing northeast. Later inspection confirms the wreck is the Antares. Photographs show her hull largely intact, nets still extended, cables wrapped tightly around the trawl winches. Damage is minimal. There are no signs of collision impact. The evidence suggests the vessel was dragged under by her own gear. Recovery operations continue for several weeks. 3 bodies are located within the hull. A 4th crew member is recovered months later from nearby seabed sediment. Investigation of Board of Inquiry convenes under the Royal Navy and the Department of Transport's Marine Accident Investigation Branch. The inquiry reconstructs both vessels' courses using navigational data, sonar logs, and radio transmissions. It determines that at 02:20, 19 hours, HMS Trenchant crossed the trawl path of the Antares at a depth of 60 meters. The submarine's fin or periscope mast likely caught the trawl warp, pulling the fishing vessel downward as it passed. The accident occurred within an area designated as shared fishing and naval training waters, where no exclusion zone existed beyond a voluntary distance guideline. Investigators conclude that the collision resulted from deficiencies in watchkeeping and situational awareness aboard the submarine. The sonar operators had failed to distinguish between 2 separate surface contacts, classifying them as one. Moreover, the standing orders of the Trenchant required that the captain be called whenever the submarine came within 4,000 yards of any surface contact. That procedure was not followed. No disciplinary action is recorded, but several policy changes follow. The Royal Navy introduces a mandatory 3,000-yard minimum separation between submarines and fishing vessels in all peacetime operations. Submarines conducting training are now required to operate with a surface escort, or to broadcast their presence in designated areas. Communication channels between the fishing industry and the Ministry of Defense are strengthened, creating a permanent liaison committee to reduce risk in mixed-use waters. The recovery in the months after the disaster, salvage crews raise the Antares from the seabed. Despite months underwater, her wooden hull remains remarkably intact. She is transported by barge to the Scottish Maritime Museum in Irvine, where engineers begin desalination and preservation. For nearly 2 decades, the vessel stands as a public exhibit. Visitors observe the trawl winches, still locked under strain, and the worn wheelhouse instruments frozen at their last readings. Plaques recount the story in restrained detail: date, time, depth, cause. It becomes a tangible reminder of the hazards faced by fishermen working close to military operations. Wider context, the loss of the Antares was not the first incident of its kind. Throughout the Cold War, numerous fishing vessels around the British Isles reported near misses with submarines operating at periscope depth. In the decade preceding the Antares accident, at least 12 trawlers suffered gear entanglements, though most escaped with damage rather than loss of life. The Royal Navy maintained strict secrecy over submarine movements, making attribution difficult. The Antares tragedy brought public attention to the issue and accelerated reforms. Submarine commanders later acknowledged that identifying small surface craft on passive sonar was inherently difficult. Fishing vessels, with irregular engine noise and metallic trawl equipment, often produced ambiguous signatures. The Trenchant's sonar system, designed primarily for detecting other submarines, lacked the fine discrimination required for surface traffic in shallow coastal waters. Subsequent upgrades incorporated new processing algorithms and revised training emphasizing civilian awareness. Human cost for the village of Caradale, the impact was immediate and enduring. Fishing communities are close-knit. Each loss is felt across families and generations. Funeral services were held within days of the recovery. The church overflowed with local residents, Coast Guard personnel, and naval representatives. Compensation was arranged through the Ministry of Defense, though no admission of liability was made in public statements. For the widows and children left behind, financial settlements did little to replace what had been lost. The harbor itself bears the traces of remembrance. Near the pier where the Antares once moored, a bronze plaque lists the names of the 4 crew: the skipper, his mate, and 2 deckhands. Every November, wreaths are placed beneath it by members of the Royal Navy and the local Fishermen's Association. The ceremony is brief and without speeches. The sea provides the only sound. Aftermath and legacy in subsequent years, the Trenchant continued active service, later refitted with updated sonar and control systems. Her role in the collision remained a quiet footnote in naval records, referenced mainly in safety training. The reforms introduced after the Antares incident became permanent fixtures in Royal Navy doctrine and were later adopted by several NATO fleets. For maritime historians, the case illustrates the intersection of civilian industry and military technology in constrained waters. It also underscores the vulnerability of small fishing vessels working unknowingly above high-speed submarines. International conventions now require better coordination in mixed-use zones, though complete prevention remains complex. Today, the Butt Sound appears as it always has: an expanse of gray-green water bordered by low hills and scattered villages. Trawlers still operate there, their routines unchanged, their reliance on the sea undiminished. To the casual observer, nothing marks the spot where the Antares went down. Only those familiar with the coast can point to the approximate position, midway between Caradale and the Isle of Arran. The story of the Antares is now taught in both naval and maritime safety courses as a case study in communication failure and the necessity of operational boundaries. It remains an example of how advanced technology and human experience can still misalign in the simplest of circumstances. 4 men died not through negligence or malice, but through a sequence of small misjudgments converging in a shared body of water on a calm November night. Closing narration: the Butt Sound is quiet again. Fishing continues as it always has, nets rising and falling with the rhythm of the tide. HMS Trenchant has long since left service, replaced by newer submarines. The Antares, once displayed in a museum, was dismantled in 2008 after her structure deteriorated. Yet her story endures in memorials, safety manuals, and the collective memory of those who work the sea. In official language, the event is recorded as a submarine trawler interaction. Fatal. In the language of the coast, it is remembered simply as the night the nets went tight.